more of a direct link to your interests. So I'll just start. This is just a brief overview of Sport Canada. Do I point at something in particular? There we go. All right. And I'll start with the first slide, give you a bit of an overview of the strategic objectives of Sport Canada. So we are resident within the Department of Canadian Heritage, and I had an interesting conversation with Jay yesterday, who was asking me why it's not with health or why it's not somewhere else. It's a good question. I don't have quite the answer to it, but as it is within the Department of Canadian Heritage, where our strategic objective is that, or strategic outcome, is that Canadians participate and excel in sport. And our mission is very simply to enhance opportunities for Canadians to participate and excel in sport. So what does that mean? This is a term that everyone used over the last 2 days, an athlete-centered approach. So this is a similar philosophy that we have at Sport in terms of putting the focus of all our programming and services on you, the athletes. So our funding is directed in three avenues. First, we provide direct support to athletes, and that's what Bob is going to speak to you about. Second, we provide support to sport organizations so that these organizations can provide programming that will help develop your abilities as an athlete. And as well, we provide funding so that athletes have opportunities to compete against the best in the world. So what that means from an organizational point of view is that we have AAP that Bob is going to speak to you about in terms of direct funding. We have the hosting program to provide opportunities for athletes to compete against the best in the world. The hosting program has a couple of components within it. And if you go to the last bullets, in terms of the program delivery components, we fund international major multi-sport games, which would be, of course, the recently concluded Pan Am 2015 and Parapan 2015, and as well Vancouver 2010. So those are the international major multi-sport games that we fund. We also fund international single sport events, and of course, as you know, this year we had a couple of big ones, FIFA Women's World Cup, what is the other one that I'm missing? Oh, yes, earlier this year, because it concluded in January. It's the Youth World Hockey that took place in Toronto and Montreal, yes. And in terms of multi-sport games for Aboriginal peoples and persons with a disability, we fund the North American Indigenous Game and the Arctic Winter Games. And of course, finally, we fund Canada Games. So let's go on to the third component, sport support, and that's the component that I am directly involved in. And I won't go through the whole slide, but ultimately, if you look at the very bottom of this slide, you'll see the groups of organizations that we fund. We fund national sport organizations, NSOs, multi-sport service organizations, MSOs, and I'm the manager for the MSOs, the MSO component. And AthleteScan is an MSO, as you well know. The examples of MSOs range from the Coaching Association of Canada, SDRCC, a little bit about yesterday, CCES, to Special Olympics, Commonwealth Games, so there are about 21 MSOs, okay? We also fund the Canadian Sport Institutes, which has been recently rebranded as COPSIN, the Canadian Olympic Paralympic Sport Institute Network. And we also do some supporting initiatives like B210 Pierre, Le Grand Défi Pierre Lavoie, which is a Quebec-based initiative looking at getting kids to increase their awareness of sport participation. And finally, we fund bilateral agreements with all 13 provinces and territories in the area of increasing sport participation. So I think you'll be interested in the next slide because it talks about money. This is our 14-15 budget, and so it's broken down by the components I spoke about. So first, in terms of sports support program, the overall budget there is 142.8 million. Athletes assistance, 28 million. Hosting, just under 20 million. I should mention the hosting amount does not include the funding for Toronto 2015. That's separately funded in terms of a multi-party agreement. And you may know the federal contribution was close to 500 million for Toronto 2015. Let's go back up to sports support. The 142 million is broken up into just under 80 million for NSOs, MSOs, and centers. And enhanced excellence, 64 million. And this 64 million is the recommendations that OTP makes in terms of targeted excellence. And those recommendations are provided to Sport Canada, and in turn, Sport Canada provides the funding of these amounts to the NSOs. So I think I just want to point out that distinction because the OTP makes the recommendations, but it's actually the federal government that provides the funding. And on the right side of that slide, you can see a breakdown of the sports support program details. NSOs received over $100 million in funding. The MSOs, 25, and the sports side is about 3.7 million. So our share of the pie is 142 million. Bob's share of the pie is 28 million. So, you know, I don't know why you give Bob so much attention. I have a couple more updates, but I'm just going to conclude with one more slide. We all know it's the year of sport in Canada. So I'll just flip to that slide. I don't know if you're aware that it's broken down into themes. So each month there's a theme. And right now we're in September, so I think I should read coaches and sport leadership rather than coaches of sport, common leadership. My apologies. With the remaining 3 months, we have in October, the kids in sports will be highlighted as well as sport research. And in November, there's the theme of dedication and sport resilience. And then we conclude the year of sport with a retrospective. And so that's how the year of sport will play out. And that's it for me. Before I pass it on to Bob, are there any questions? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Okay, merci. Oh, you were asking questions. I thought you were bringing Bob up.
Mary Sampson, Rugby. I have a question. If you could flip back 2 slides regarding the funding.
Funding, yes.
So you're the June month of women's sport, made me think of this, but are there any items under the sports support program, the 142, where the funding is provided to NSOs, MSOs, CSCs, and where that funding needs to be divided equally among men and women? Is there any, either a directive from Sport Canada that funding has to be divided equally to men and women that can be directed to teams specifically? And if there isn't a specific directive, is there any informal push from Sport Canada that should be the case?
I think the short answer to that is no, there's no directive in terms of whether it's a 50-50 split or not. But I'm pretty sure it's equitable, it's representative, only to the extent that the NSOs that we fund that their programs are well balanced in terms of between men and women. So I think we could probably do a search in our database and find out what that actual number is. We haven't done that recently. But yeah, our funding is directly to the NSOs. So the question, I think, really is, do the NSOs provide programs that are equitable to men and women, and I think you would probably be able to answer that anecdotally, and I would think the answer is yes. So it's not a direct, full answer, but I think that's
It's a loaded question.
yes, it is. Yes, Josh.
Josh from Bocce. What are the projections for the following years for this budget?
It's pretty much the same. The one thing that will come into play is a budget announcement from 2015, which is this year, that, with regards to next year, but that's still under. It still needs to be. There still needs to be consultations and decisions as to how that is going to be run.
And we had an announcement a few months ago about, I think it was 20 million or 40 million being injected directly to up and coming.
Yeah, that's the next gen. So yeah, it is 20 million over 4 years, and because of the elections, we haven't been able to have our consultations with the sport community on it. So once the election's over, that consultation will resume, and the program details will be finalized, I guess, is the best thing I can
So
say.
we'll have an opportunity.
Oh, yeah, pretty sure, yeah. Okay. Okay, anything else? Yes, hi.
Hi, Carolyn from Snowboarding. I'm just wondering what amount is given to OTP in there?
Okay, so OTP as an organization or OTP,
Well, what I'm wondering when you say NSO, is that OTP? Because you don't give, you give directly to NSOs, or do you give to OTP for NSO?
okay, so there's two things. OTP as an organization is funded by Sport Canada to operate as an organization, and I think the amount is maybe just under 2 million. It would show, it doesn't show here quite because it's not an MSOs yet, but in terms of our funding framework, starting in next fiscal, so which will be 2016, OTP will be recognized as an MSO, so then the funding for MSOs there will include OTP. So this is for OTP to conduct its operations, and that's the extent of our funding to OTP. But the 64 million you see there in terms of enhanced excellence, that is the amount that OTP works with in terms of making recommendations for targeted excellence. It makes those recommendations, it provides it back to us, to Sport Canada, and we then in turn provide the funding to the NSO via a contribution agreement.
And just out of curiosity, has it ever happened that OTP's provided you their recommendation and you said, no, we don't think so? Or do you always comply with OTP's recommendations?
Well, comply, I'm not sure I use that word, but we do, yeah, I think from time to time we have had follow-up discussions with them on their recommendations, but it's a good relationship, and our Sport Canada reps do sit with OTP when they develop their recommendations, so it's a good partnership. Yeah. Yes.
Here from Field Hockey.
I think I should know all your board members, and I know your board members, but I missed the last board meeting.
Just you said that Own the Podium receives $2 million for their operations. That's more than the majority of NSOs have to run for their yearly budget themselves. So it just seems like, are there not enough technical-minded people within Sport Canada that you could disperse that $2 million directly to the NSOs and skip the middleman?
Okay, that's an excellent question.
$2 million is not so quick and nimble anymore.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I can answer that question right now. We've had discussions on that same topic, but this is the direction that is done at the senior level.
Maybe it's part of game plan and we're just hiring ex-Olympians to work from the podium.
That's okay.
Transition plan.
That's a good way to look at it.
Let's talk later, Warren.
All right, I know Bob is itching to have a go. If there's nothing else, I will just I'll pass it on to Bob. Okay, thanks.
we have the slides, please?
There's a clicker,
Oh, where's the clicker, Walden?
unless Walden stole it.
On the podium. No problem.
On the podium.
Hey, there we are. Morning, folks. How's everybody feeling from the party last night? I hear it was noisy and late. Anyways, I just want to know how many people here have been to Forum before? Oh, lots, eh? Last year, not so many. Anyways, so for those that have been to Forum before, the AAP 101 deck will be familiar to you. It hasn't changed that much. There's just a few updates on financial stuff. So I'm going to talk about two things this morning. I'm going to talk about just a basic overview of the Athlete Assistance Program, what it is, what we do, what our funding is. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the status of the athlete study, which has been ongoing for the past, I guess 3 years, well, 2.5 years, with the data collection and everything. And the report study was released in May. Anybody can get a look at it on the Library and Archives website. And all the study and all the data was sent to Athletes Can in, I think it was May or June, I'm not sure, Ash. But Athletes Can has all the information on the study. So those are the two things I'm going to go over with you guys today. And keep all, if you can, I'm going to try to do this in 30 minutes. I got quite a few slides. I'll try to get through it. Ashley's going to tell me if I'm running late. And save all your questions until after the presentation. And as you can see, there's no target on my back today. So be gentle. So this is just an overview of what the AAP does. I mean, it's the only program in Sport Canada that provides direct financial support to athletes. The intent of the funding is to basically offset the cost that you guys have for your involvement in high performance sport. It's not intended to provide support for all your needs. It's not a bonus. It's not a salary. It's a grant to help offset your costs. There are three major components to it. And I'll go into a little bit detail to this a little bit later. The living and training allowance, which is a monthly stipend that goes to the athletes' tuition and deferred tuition, which most of the tuition we pay directly to the universities, so the athletes don't have to bear the costs up front. And deferred tuition, which we basically bank for athletes that don't use tuition while they're carded, and they can use it after they're carded. And the last piece is the special needs piece, which has increased significantly in the last 3 or 4 years. I think a lot of it is a result of consultation with the sport community and some of that, a big piece of that with you guys at Athletes Can. Just a little bit on the numbers. The Athlete Assistance Program has actually been in place since 1977, and it's grown quite a bit in the last 20-25 years. Right now, we have over 90 sport disciplines that we deal with regularly, and we actually approve funding for over 1,900 athletes a year now. If you look at our annual budget now is $28 million. In 1999, 2000, it was $9 million. So it's almost tripled in the last 15 years. I think in the last time I looked, since the onset of the program in 1977, we've provided support to over 14,000 athletes and almost $500 million. And I would say the majority of that $500 million has come in the last 10 to 15 years. And there's two levels of funding for the living and training allowance. That's the senior, which is $1,500 a month, and the development card, which is $900 a month. all this funding is tax-free. Sport Canada budget, Wallen just went over this with you guys, so I'm going to skip that. So why do we provide AAP support? As I said earlier, it's to offset the cost of that you guys have. It's not intended to meet all of your needs, and it's intended to allow athletes to train more often and more regularly, and spend more training time on competition. One of the things that, when it was originally put in place, we wanted to lengthen the career of high-performance athletes, and if you look at the data that we have, we've got more athletes now staying in the system longer. Athletes are carded for a longer period of time, and I think the average age of carded athletes is greater than it was 10 or 15 years ago for sure. And with the tuition support and the support, well, the athlete assistance program, I guess, works a little bit in concert with the CSIs, and in terms of transition support, we do provide some funding to Game Plan. Now, not a lot, and the tuition money that we provide is intended to help you guys in your transition after sport. And we've got an exit questionnaire that we pass on to every athlete that we know has formally retired. And the results of that exit questionnaire indicate that one of the biggest contributions to helping athletes prepare for their transition in sport is the education that they get through the tuition that we spend. And I guess last but not least is the funding has helped to contribute towards improved performances at major international competitions. Okay, there's minimum standards for NSOs to have access to what we call quotas for carded athletes, which will allow them to nominate athletes to us for AAP support. So the NSO has to have a high performance program that's supported by the Sport Funding Accountability Framework. That's through the sport support program that Wallen just talked about. There has to be a World Championships or equivalent every 2 years. If there's no World Championship every 2 years or equivalent, then that's a deal breaker right away. We won't consider providing support to those sports. There has to be a national team program in place with yearly annual training plans for the athletes, yearly annual competition programs for the athletes. And when sports first come on to the athlete assistance program, we're more stringent in reviewing that program and looking at it and make sure that it meets our requirements. The athletes have to have individual training plans. Those training plans have to be periodized. There has to be peaking and tapering involved, and they have to be significant documents that are planned out for your training and competition over the year. The athletes have to be monitored by the NSO. There has to be a plan in place to monitor the athletes. The NSOs have to know what you guys are doing throughout the year, where you're going to be, where you're training, where you're competing, and they have to let us know how they do that, whether it's through a national coach, whether it's through National Training Center coaches, or whether they use some sort of IT system to get reports from you guys on what you're doing on a regular basis. There has to be formal processes for selecting athletes, especially for carding, and we monitor that very closely. And last of all, there has to be an athlete NSO agreement in place. And you guys spoke about that a little bit already, Josh, right? Yeah. Okay, next. There also has to be minimum standards for athletes, and these are just basic minimum standards. You have to be a permanent resident of Canada. You don't have to be a citizen, but you do have to be a permanent resident. You have to be eligible to represent Canada at Worlds and Olympic Games, and that's important. For most sports now, in order to compete for your country, you have to be a citizen. So that top one there, permanent resident, is almost redundant, and I would say the vast majority of sports now, you have to be a citizen to represent Canada internationally. The only sport that I can think of that you don't at World Championships right now is bobsleigh. And I don't think there are any other sports where...
Rugby, you don't. You don't have to be the yard.
Pardon me?
Rugby, you don't.
Rugby, you don't? Okay. You have to meet the carding criteria as a member of a national team. If you have dual citizenship and you go to the World Championships and compete for your other country, and you get a top 8 finish, and you come to us and ask us for carding, based on that result, we won't approve it. It has to be as a member of a Canadian team. And finally, you have to be available to represent Canada. You have to make yourself available to represent Canada internationally at major competitions. And that's a lot of time that's in your athlete agreement. Okay, identification of athletes. It's important for you guys to know that we work with the NSOs in identifying athletes. We are partners with the NSOs. We can't run this program from an office in Ottawa. It's the NSOs that are our eyes and ears of the program, and they basically do all the groundwork on the program. So we work in concert with the NSOs, and basically there are a number of levels of carding criteria. The first one is the international level. That's set by Sport Canada. It's top 8 at World Championships, Olympics, or Paralympics. The other 2 levels, the national team card, which is also senior level. Those 2 are both the same amount of money, $18,000 a year, $1,500 a month. Those criteria are set by the NSOs, and each of the criteria is sport specific. So it's developed, those criteria developed by your NSOs. For individual sports, the majority of the time, we're looking at objective measurements. So if it's time, distance, something like that, rankings at World Championships, world rankings like swimming and athletics and a lot of the winter sports. Most of them are, the vast majority are all objective. Team sports are a little different. They are a little subjective based on team selection, national team selection. A lot of the criteria, especially in some of the bigger sports and better organized sports, do have a quite detailed information on what the coaches will be looking at. I know in field hockey it's a pretty good criteria. Women's hockey, it's very detailed in terms of what the coaches will be looking at, and even some of the measurements that they'll be looking at. So it's not all subjective. There is some objectivity in there. The development cards for younger athletes, it's exactly the same. It's the NSOs that develop that criteria for up and coming athletes. So each sport gets a quota that's eligible for AAP support. That quota is determined by 3 things. It's determined by what we determine as the national team size. How many athletes does it take to compete internationally at the Olympic Games? What's the team sizes? How many athletes are actually competing at World Championships, involved in World Cups? So we use that to determine the team size. And we also use international results, World Championships, Olympic Games, Paralympic Games over the past 4 years. And we look at top 3s, top 8s, top 16s. And we use a formula basically to calculate card quotas, as part of the card quotas. And the last piece on the quotas is what we term as a subjective allocation, and we work with OTP in looking at the actual quality of the national team program, the quality of the coaching, the capacity of the NSO to deliver those programs. So it's a little bit, and to be quite honest, the ability of the NSO to meet its responsibilities under the Athlete Assistance Program. So if the NSO is not meeting its responsibilities under the Athlete Assistance Program, that could play as part of our decisions, our quotas. And as I said before, the NSOs are responsible for nominating athletes based on this criteria. They have to nominate athletes based on the criteria. And all they can do is nominate. They don't card athletes. Sport Canada cards athletes. We review all the nominations every year. We review over 2,000 nominations every year, and our responsibility is to make sure that those athletes that are being nominated meet the criteria of the NSO and are presented in an order that's in the carding criteria as a prioritization order. So if they nominate somebody that does not meet the criteria, that's what we call an irregular nomination, and we return it back to the NSO without consideration. I tell them to redo their nominations. Okay, next, provision of AP support. This is just a little bit more detail of what I talked about before. The living and training allowance we provide in advance every 2 months. It's $1,500 a month. The development cards are $900 a month. It's paid bi-monthly, so we have big check runs every 6 months to send out payments to athletes. It's all direct deposit now. Anybody, you guys know that you're all getting direct deposits or have been getting direct deposits for them. All your money's deposited directly into your bank accounts. So in terms of maximum amount of living and training, it's $18,000 a year. Tuition support is a maximum of $5,000 a year or carding cycle. Deferred tuition is the same. It's a maximum of $5,000 per fiscal year. And then the special needs, there are 6 components. The top 3 there are the older portions of the special needs, and they're about $1,000 each a year maximum. And with exception to the relocation expense, those are all income tested. And the bottom 3 there, the excellent support, the child dependent support, and the high support needs for Paralympic athletes. All those are new in 2012, and those are a maximum of $6,000 a year. The total maximum that one athlete can receive a year is $36,000 a year, and it's all tax-free. There aren't a lot of athletes that get access to all of that money, but there are a number that are receiving over $30,000 a year from us. Okay, I just want to wrap this up pretty quickly and get on to the status of the athlete study. I'm running. Where's Ashley? She's not here to tell me I'm running late. So there's a number of ways that athletes can be, their support can be terminated. Non-renewal of carded status, basically the athlete doesn't meet the carding criteria. Voluntary withdrawal or retirement. You can either retire or you can, in the middle of the year, say, I can't meet my requirements as a carded athlete. I want to take 6 months off, or similar circumstances. Failure to meet training or competition commitments, that usually comes from the NSO if athletes aren't meeting their training commitments or not attending competitions that are in their athlete agreement. Violation of the athlete agreement, which can include gross breach of discipline. And then fraudulent misrepresentation, that's in there, in case we get application forms from athletes who say they're Canadian citizens and aren't Canadian citizens, and that comes up once in a while. Like I've been at Sport Canada for 25 years, and maybe 1 or 2 cases where we've had to deal with where the information on the athlete agreement has not been accurate. And the last one is doping violations. Our appeal policies, they're part of the requirement of the NSOs is that they have an appeal policy in place, and the athletes have access to that appeal policy. There's also not only a direct appeal to the NSO, but following that, the athletes have right to appeal a decision through the SDRCC. So if the athlete's not satisfied with the NSO appeal decision, they can take it to the SDRCC, which is independent arbitration. The Athlete Assistance Program, as far as I know, is the only program within Canadian Heritage and maybe all of government where our decisions, Sport Canada decisions, are subject to third-party independent arbitration. So Sport Canada carding decisions, if an athlete's nominated and there's a disagreement between us and either the athlete or the NSO as to whether or not the athlete meets the criteria, and usually those are interpretation decisions where the criteria may not be totally clear, or the athlete or the NSO don't think it's totally clear, and we send it back to the NSO. Those kind of decisions can be appealed to the SDRCC, and the other one is I guess withdrawal of carding can be appealed through the NSO and the SDRCC. Anti-doping, you guys probably heard enough about anti-doping over the last little while with all the changes in WADA. Our policies on anti-doping in terms of the athlete assistance program have not changed yet. We're basically waiting to see what happens with this 4 years and down kind of decisions that are now in place. We've kept our policy the same as it has been before. Athletes who have a sanction, sport eligibility sanction of 2 years or more are permanently ineligible for AAP support. Athletes who have a sanction of less than 2 years are ineligible for AAP support during the time of that sanction. I'm just going to go through this quickly. This is just some graphical information to show you the AAP spending and the increases. As you can see, since 2010, it's been pretty steady, around 25, 26, $27 million. 2004 was the year where the big increases were made, the last increases to AAP stipends and increases to the number of athletes. So that's where those peaks come in there from those decisions. And as you can see, back in 2000, 1995, the numbers were much lower than they are now. I think when I first started with Sport Canada, we were looking at a $4 million budget and certainly less than 900 athletes carded. Deferred tuition and tuition, just to show the increase in tuition and deferred tuition. We have our $28 million budget is basically split off in three pieces: living and training, which is $24 million a year, and regardless of what Wallace says, the 28 being mine, it's not mine. And we've got we budget $2.5 million for tuition, and we budget $1.5 million for special needs. And as you can see, in 2012-13, we blew our $2.5 million budget by quite a bit. We had to make some changes then, and that's when we reduced the maximum allowance to $5,000, or maximum tuition to $5,000. And special needs, big increases in special needs since 2012. So a slow increase. We're getting to where we're almost at our maximum that we anticipated with the new special needs pieces coming in place, which is about $1.5 million. So now we're providing support to 268 athletes to the tune of almost $1.3 million. And that's as a result of the increase that was made in 2012. Stipends, just to finish this off, just a little quick look at the increase in stipends. There had been, over the years, pretty consistent increases, over a period of time. However, there has not been an increase since 04-05, and I know Athletes Canada is concerned about that. The only real increase that we had since 04 was the increase in special needs in 2012. So let's wait for questions after I go through the status of the athlete study.
So 15 minutes total for me.
15 minutes for this?
For you.
Okay, I got 15 minutes left. Okay.
Including questions.
Okay. So some of this stuff is probably pretty interesting for you guys. So this just scratches the surface. We've had a student in Sport Canada for the last 3 or 4 months just graphing all the information. I'm a visual person. But I can read stuff, and it just doesn't grab me as much as graphical information. And some of this stuff is some of the work that this student has been doing. I'm just putting a face on the numbers, really. So this is the 5th study. The first one was in '92, and the data collection. This is the first time that we ran data collection.
Can you speak up?
Oh, sorry, I'm not using the mic. Sorry. This is the first time that we ran the data collection over a full year to try to get as much input from you guys as possible. We did get to about 50% of carded athletes replying. If you guys did respond to the survey, thank you very much. If you didn't, the next time it comes out, we would appreciate your concern. It's the chance for you guys to have input into the system. We use this information all the time. This information was used to make those increases in 2012, and it gives us a picture of what the athletes how the athletes are feeling in terms of their motivation in sport, their satisfaction in sport. So these are the major themes. We've started probably 2009 when we started taking paying more attention to the technical aspects of the sport, the athletes' training situations, how they feel, how many hours they're training, satisfaction with their coaches, satisfaction with their NSOs. There's all that kind of information in the study. And all this information is available from Athletes Camp. If you guys want a copy, I'll send you a copy. Just email me and I'll send you a copy. We look at the CSI services, and this is it's not just for you guys. It's for the CSIs also. Like we ask about are you satisfied with the services that you're getting? We ask the athletes about what they think are the most important services that they can receive, and we ask them if they're satisfied with those services and the amount they're getting and the quality they're getting and the quantity they're getting. We look at the financial picture, and this information in terms of looking at the stipends and the fact that they haven't been increased and so forth is going to be very important. It'll be important for you guys because there's some good information in this. And finally, we asked the athletes about views on the AP. So my staff and I know how you guys, your perspective of the service that you're getting from my staff. And to be quite honest, the satisfaction is pretty high, which is appreciated by my staff and motivates the staff. So overall satisfaction, this is on the right-hand side here is the 15 study, and on the left is the results from the 09 study. And to be quite honest, this hasn't changed since 1992. The motivation for athletes becoming involved in high-performance sport is not money. It's all intrinsic. It's all internal. Okay, it's for the love of sport, pursuit of excellence, desire to win, personal self-development, enjoyment. When it gets down to money, it's pursue a professional career in sport. 15% of athletes said that's one of their motivations. So you guys aren't in it for the money. You're in it because you enjoy it. So those things haven't changed a lot. And some of this information is good. It's the satisfaction that you guys have with your athletic career, and it's very, very high. And since '92, it was high, and it stayed steady in terms of the enjoyment you get from your sport. It's very, very high. Experiencing violence-free sport, like these next three, violence in sport, doping-free sport, and experience harassment, abuse-free sport, they've all improved over the last 4 or 5 years. Which I think some of my colleagues in Sport Canada are happy to see, because they work on this a lot. There's a big push in terms of making sure that sport is violence-free, it is harassment-free. And I know I've talked to some athletes in here this weekend that have some concerns about some of this, so we'll try to address those things. The level of achievement is up a little bit. Treated with respect is up. I don't think that would be called significantly. The only one that's down at all is recognition. But you can see that, you know, from '92, the increase in terms of athletes being satisfied with the recognition that they get has increased. And the bottom one is the one that's really low and has been low, is the amount of income or material rewards that you guys get. And if you go to the 1992 column, in 1992 it was really low, 16%. And one of the good things, despite the fact that only 43% of athletes are satisfied with the material rewards that they have, there's been a steady improvement in it in the last 20 years. But again, that's something that you guys can use. Training competition. So as I said, I think the 09 study was the first time that we put a lot of technical information into the study. And this is, I put this on here because one of the requirements of the NSOs and the athletes in getting AAP support is they have to have an annual training plan. They have to have a quality annual training plan. If you look at this, do you have a written annual training plan, training competition plan that is tailored to you specifically? 63% no. Where are those other 28 to 35%, right? Why don't those athletes have them? So we're looking into that now. I think part of it is because a lot of the athletes that, well, not a lot, but some of the athletes that responding to the study are first-year athletes, and they probably don't have an individualized training plan yet. The other aspect is that we can look at is team sports. Team sports usually have team plans, not individual plans, but the athletes still need individual training plans. So we're gonna try to identify the NSOs where that's an issue and work with them on that. And this is just a graphic that shows the difference between with this study. We asked ECOS, who's the contractor that did the study, to show us some information on the differences between the targeted sports and the entire athlete population. So this is just one of the graphics on showing the difference between targeted sports, which are the stripe part, and the overall athlete population. And you can see that there's a little bit more of a higher level of athletes in targeted sports that have an individualized training plan. The fact that 27% of athletes in targeted sports don't have annual individualized training plans is a problem, and we're going to address that with OTP. Okay, just to show you some of the different information that we can get from the study with regards to age and carding levels. I mean, this clearly shows that in terms of having training plans, the older you get, the more athletes are having individual training plans. So the younger athletes, you know, it's 61% have training plans. And when you get back up to the older athletes, we're looking at 75, 80%. So at least when the athletes are getting into the system, we know that more of them have individualized training plans. Okay, just some information on where the principal coaches are coming from, so we know who's coaching the athletes. So it's, most of them, almost 50% are coaches that are hired by the NSOs. Well, actually more than that, 55%. Some of them are part-time, most of them are full-time, and the other big piece is personal coaches. So that's basically what we're looking at. We're also looking at some information on how many hours they spend with their coach, which is probably very similar to where it was in 09. Okay, this is time devoted to sport. How many hours do you guys spend training every week? 5 minutes? Okay, I'm almost done. So it's been pretty consistent since 1992. You know, at the average across all athletes about 35, 36 hours a week, and it's basically stayed the same since then. We do have some information on the differences between targeted and non-targeted. I did put that up. Athlete support services. So this is some of the information that we've got from with regards to CSIs and athlete satisfaction with the services that they got. And it's one of the things that kind of struck us as a little interesting, is that only 53% of the athletes are getting what they believe are all the services, sports science and medicine services from CSIs that they actually need. The fact that 53% are getting all that they need is good, but we should be trying to improve that. We should be trying to improve that. And this information goes to the CSI, so they know. They're aware of all this. Okay, so and the other stuff on the CSIs I already told you about. We have your views on what's needed. We have your views on what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. They know that. They have that information. They can adjust their programs accordingly. Okay, financial snapshot. So this stuff here is it's very, very interesting information. And this is total income. As you can see at the top left up there, almost 50% of athletes, or 50% of athletes' income comes from athlete assistance program, and then another 15% comes from provincial athlete assistance program. So that's 60% of your income comes from federal and provincial governments. Total income is down since '09, which is really interesting. Where the biggest difference is employment income. If you take a look at employment income, it's 7,000 compared to 9,000. So you guys are working less. Athletes are working less.
Is that after inflation?
Yes, it's adjusted for inflation. Okay, this is just a little bit more of the comparisons that we're doing between target athletes and the full athlete population, and we're actually, some of this information we're trying to look at target athletes and non-target athletes. So we're asking ECOS to provide us. It won't be as detailed, but we will get that information. So target athletes' average total income is higher. And the other thing that we wanted to look at, we wanted to look at not just the average income of all athletes, because the target athlete population is very diverse. You got young people that are 14, 15, 16 years old that don't have any income at all, except for their AAP income, and you have athletes that are mature athletes that are 30, 40, 50 years old that actually have families and need to support families. So their incomes are higher. And so if you take a look at we're just doing a look at the carding levels right now. So if you look at the average income of D cards, it's way lower than C1s, way lower than senior cards, way lower than senior international cards. So the deeper you get into the system, the higher the income is getting. Where it's coming from, we haven't taken a look at that yet. And the other piece that we took a look at was age, to show that under 20 athletes, as I said earlier, they're not making a lot of money. And their average is 10,000, and that's probably mostly through athlete assistance program or provincial assistance programs. And then when you get up to athletes being 35 and older, you guys still hear me? Yeah. The information shows that their incomes are higher, not necessarily high enough to meet all your requirements, but certainly high enough to meet your sport costs. This is average monthly expenses, and they have increased a little bit since 2009. Not a lot, about 10%. About 10%, which is probably what we would expect in that period of time. 43% of those expenses are sport related.
So Bob, finish in 2 minutes and then move to questions?
Yep, we can. So again, just some information on the difference between targeted athletes and the total athlete population in terms of what their sport expenses are. So you can see here that for the most part, across all the spectrum of card levels, targeted athletes have higher sport-related expenses, or athletes in targeted sports, sorry. Source of financial support. So 76% of the athletes say that they depend on AAP to a high degree, and then other sources that they depend on to a high degree are family members and provincial AAP. Financial barriers. I think this is the last slide. Again, we wanted to find out what impact money or lack of money was having on your access to certain requirements. So international competitions, this is the first time we did this, and it's at 21%. We need to take a look at the difference between that, differences in targeted sports and non-targeted sports, because targeted sports certainly get more funding for international competition than non-targeted sports. We want to see where the satisfaction is in there. But I think for the most part, they're probably pretty similar to 09. Sport medicine services seems to be a little bit higher. But some of the other ones are down. There's money has not been a barrier to a great extent anyways, for equipment, for proper housing, for training facilities, for coaching services.
In 2 minutes.
And domestic competitions are way down. And that's it.
Bob.
I'm done.
Thank you. So Bob and Wallen, thank you very much for those presentations, and really thank you for your passion and your commitment to sport, and you both are strong allies to Athletes Can and to national team athletes, and we really appreciate you coming and presenting to us and engaging with us year after year. And let's move into a strict 10-minute question period here for people. Okay, John?
It's my first time at the Athletes Camp Forum, and I just had a question about if anyone has let's say an underlying disease that they're dealing with while they're competing, and if it ever has a flare-up, or if they're ever needing to take some time off competition or competing to deal with a medical condition. Does the AAP funding, is there programs that can, if they don't meet the criteria for that year, give them a little bit of an extension or something like that?
We have a policy on injury, illness, and pregnancy, and how they affect athletes training and competition, and the impact it has on their ability to meet carding requirements and to requalify. So the bottom line is on this, that our policy says that if an athlete who is carded is unable to be renominated, does not meet the criteria, strictly due to health-related reasons, injury, illness, pregnancy, can be nominated in the next year based on an injury provision, as long as certain requirements are met, and that includes that the injury is well documented, there's medical documentation on it, that the NSO is satisfied that's has significant contribution to the athlete not meeting the carding criteria. There has to be something in the carding criteria that allows the NSO to nominate athletes under these conditions, and there has to be something in the carding criteria that prioritizes those athletes in the carding criteria. Where are they in terms of the priority? So the bottom line is, yeah, there's a significant part of our policies that deals with that.
Cool. So, but what I really need to make sure of is that Canada Snowboard has it written in their policy with me.
I don't know 90 karting criteria off by heart, so.
But like that's what I need to make sure of, that if it's not in my contract with Canada Snowboard.
It's not the contract, it's a karting criteria you have to be sure of.
Okay.
Okay, so go to the karting criteria.
Awesome. Thank you.
Caro, you're next.
Hey Bob, Caro Calvé from snowboarding, another snowboarder. We had a lot of discussions in Teams yesterday, and one thing that came up was one federation was splitting the cards.
Yep.
So instead of saying, well, you get your 12 months of karting, they were saying, well, you get 9 months, and this other guy will get. So is that something that's normal, allowed?
Yeah, I spoke to the athlete this morning on it.
Okay, good.
And in team sports, we treat team sports a little differently than individual sports, because obviously they are different. We have minimum requirements in team sports for athletes participating in national team programs. If the athletes aren't together for a certain period of time, or that an individual athlete is not involved in national team programming for less, if they're only involved in national team programming for less than 30 days, they're not eligible to be nominated. They have to be involved in the national team program. More than 30 days, we'll look at carding them for 4, 6, 8 months. If they get to 60 days, then we'll fund them for 12 months. I don't know the exact extent of what the reason is for this particular sport moving some of the 12-month carding to other athletes. It's probably to try to give some of their younger developing athletes access to cards, to AAP funding, because there's more benefit. Well, yeah, as soon as you're carded, you get access to all the other stuff, right? Even if you're funding for 4 months, you still get access to $5,000 in tuition. You still get access to up to $13,000 in special needs. So there are some benefits in that. If an individual sport is going to do that, in terms of wanting to allocate their cards, we allow the NSOs to determine whether they're going to allocate their cards to senior cards or development cards, and that has to be within their criteria. That's the first thing. If they want to allocate only 6 months to their development cards until 12 months, they have to justify it to us. So it could be that these younger athletes are in national team programs for they're involved for a 6-month period in their national team programs, and the other 6 months they're training by themselves, and the NSOs has less impact on what they're doing. So there are a number of reasons why sports come to us and request that they do not that they allocate the resources in ways that would provide less than 12 months carding to the athletes. So there has to be some justification for it. In this particular case, I don't know what top of my head. I wasn't involved in the review. So, but they do have to justify it to us. Okay.
At that table. You're next.
Ahmed from Global. My question is about development card. Is there any age requirement for development card? Because last year we had 40 and 44 years old that got development carding.
Yeah. So there is no specific age requirement. To be honest, we've been involved in a couple of human rights cases where age was part of the carding criteria. And even though I thought that we could justify it, based on the fact that younger athletes aren't as well trained, they have had less experience. We don't necessarily not like to see it, but we always caution the NSOs in using age in their carding criteria because it can lead to human rights issues. In terms of somebody that's 44, Paralympic sports are quite different. In terms of when athletes first start their involvement in Paralympic sports. So if an athlete has a new injury and is now involved in Paralympic sports, and they're 30 years old and they've never been carded before and they're just starting to get into the sport, yeah, we can justify a development card in those circumstances. But normally, in the able-bodied sports, we look at things like junior world championships, the proximity of the athlete to his or her involvement in junior world championships. You know, if somebody comes in and we have policies in place that says if you've been a carded athlete for a number of years, I think it's 2 or 3 years at the senior level, and we won't card you at the development level. So if you've been a senior international card and your performance drops and it drops to the development card level, we're not going to card you. So there's specific requirements around those things.
So I think this will be the last question, likely, but we'll wait for the time.
Depends on how long you're in.
So Haley Daniels, whitewater kayaking and canoeing.
What sport?
Sorry, my voice is okay. Haley Daniels, whitewater canoeing and kayaking.
Okay.
So do you have to be an Olympic sport to be carded?
No.
Okay.
You don't have to be an Olympic sport. Our priority is Olympic sports and Paralympic sports.
Right.
Okay. In Olympic and Paralympic. That's it.
No, so I'm currently not an Olympic sport, but I'm not receiving carding and I'm not eligible for it. And I just want to know why.
Are you C1 canoe?
Yeah.
Okay.
He knows who I am. Good. That's a good thing.
We dealt with this before. In Olympic sports, only the events on the program of the Olympic program or the Paralympic program are eligible for carding support. So if
But you just said that sports that are not Olympic are eligible for carding.
Yeah, you're in canoe kayak, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just confused about your answer.
C1 is an event in canoe kayak. Okay?
Yes.
It is not on the Olympic program. That is the reason C1 is not eligible for carding.
But I'm at World Championships and World Cups and the Pan American Games.
That's what our policies are. It doesn't matter if you go to the World Championships. So it doesn't.
But it said on your slide minimum standards that you could be at a World Championship level or Olympic level to receive carding. I'm training every single day, and you know I have to raise $50,000 a year for myself, and not having that $30,000 a year from Sport Canada really hinders my results.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's.
And I'm not the only person in this situation. There's other people in other sports.
We have that policy in place for a reason. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of events in Olympic and Paralympic sports that are not on the Olympic program. We don't have the money to fund athletes in all those events. If you're competing in an Olympic sport and that event is not on the Olympic program, we're not going to be able to.
So right now we are proposed for Tokyo 2020.
Pardon me?
We are proposed for Tokyo 2020.
Yeah.
It's not official, it hasn't an official announcement, but what does that mean for myself and other canoe athletes?
Okay,
Does that mean we're going to be proposed?
Talk with your athlete rep over there.
We're Canoe Kayak Canada, but we're
okay, so you're canoe and you're
I'm a sprint rep.
Sprint rep, okay, and you're whitewater. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we both have canoe athletes in the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if women's canoe gets on the Olympic program, the C1.
But it's not a matter of if it's
Pardon me?
100% it will be. It's just it hasn't been official.
Right. So
when does that
here's the process. If the decision is made in 2016,
right?
Okay. So what your NSO needs to do is they need to put something in their criteria that basically says if there are new events that go onto the Olympic program, and in order to do that, some events are going to have to come off, right? Because canoe's not going to get more athletes on the Olympic program. No sport are going to get more athletes on the Olympic program.
Yeah, and we know that. We're getting.
So Jeremiah, correct me if I'm wrong in that. If you're in here, am I correct in that?
In order for a certain event to get into the Olympics, other programs or other events have to get taken out for there to be medals.
Yeah, normally if a sport wants to add new events on the Olympic program, they're going to have to remove some. Their quota for a number of athletes per sport is not going to change. It's going to be the same number of athletes on the program, right?
Yeah, I think so, right.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm just wondering. You're saying some sports have to be taken out in order for other sports to be funded in terms of karting.
Yeah, sports and events.
But I'm just wondering, how do you go about to raise the money that you're going to give out to athletes? Is it your decision, Bob, or do you have to lobby the government? Like, how does it work for you to lobby for us athletes?
Okay.
Because you're on our side, Bob, right?
Okay, that's a separate question. That's a separate question to this one here.
What she's,
Yeah,
I know, but
the $28 million that we get for athlete assistance program comes from the taxpayer. Okay, in order to get in order to get an increase in our budget, there has to be a decision in cabinet and parliament to increase our budget. Okay. So, I'm not responsible for. I'm not responsible for lobbying my own bosses, right? I can't lobby the government. What I can do is provide them with recommendations and information to react and get more decision-making information on lobbying that you guys do and the NSOs do. So that's where change is made. Change is made at the political level.
So if you're lobbying for us, are you going to lobby for women? Because that's like right now you're not lobbying for gender equality.
Well,
you're not.
and to be quite honest, like canoe kayak is one of the last bastions of
Bob, I'm just going to cut you off for a second.
Gender equity. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify about this Olympic events thing. Pyeongchang just added 3 new events and only took off 1, so they don't necessarily have to cut other events to add more events. So just wanted to clarify, like it doesn't always happen that way. Okay?
Yeah, but the number of athletes on the program is still the same.
I think there's probably an incredible amount of discussion that we could have about this, and from a business perspective, one of the things that I see, and I get a closing comment, so it's not, because I give you a present, so you're not allowed to comment back. But one of the things that I see is, and it goes off Carol's question.
I'm not allowed to comment
back?
About,
nope, I get the closing comment, last word. So Carol mentioned about splitting cards, and this idea of you guys have to pay this, $5,000 of tuition, and to me, when I was hearing that conversation, I was like, Sport Canada has just diluted their entire programming by a decision by the NSO. There's conversations back and forth between NSOs and Sport Canada that happen that determine the amount of cards that should be allowed. And then the NSO goes and does this back pocket deal that splits cards that costs you more money, that costs us more money. That means Haley doesn't get carding because 3 cards were split, therefore that extra $5,000 tuition a year couldn't be put towards another card. So no. So this is, from a business perspective, Sport Canada, there's the lobbying side, and then there's this business side that you get to do that NSOs are doing something so that they can wrench as much money out of Sport Canada for the athletes that they have. I know I'm putting it very aggressively. They're not doing back pocket deals, but this is how we feel, and this is how we see this, is those athletes that got split cards, they probably deserved it to get those 4 months of carding, and good for those NSOs for finding a loophole. But there's some of us, canoe kayak, C1, rugby women's 15s, table tennis. Holy crap, this is frustrating to see. And we are so lucky that we get to have, hold on Haley, we are so lucky that we can have these discussions with you,
Because now I'm going to go offline with you and go, how do we stop NSOs from splitting cards? How do we get more cards? Because at some point, this is the same discussion we have every year. This is the same discussion we had in 2012 during my first forum. And so we want to challenge you, obviously, as a collective, as Athletes Can, what we can do to support athletes. We are national team athletes. We are not Olympic, Paralympic, World Championship. We are national team athletes. And so that's what I'm going to close with is thank you. Thank you for coming here, because this is, like you said at the very beginning, have a bullseye on your back. Thank you for coming here. We do appreciate it, but we love challenging you. We are competitive on the field, and we are competitive off the field 100%. So on that note, thank you. I have gifts for you.